Maybe I grew up in some environments where certain churches would tell me that I was going to go to hell if I danced. Maybe some people in those environments told me that I was going to go to hell if I wore certain clothes. All of those things happened to me.
Hello and welcome to HolisticCircle podcast. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy, and definitely very much welcome Sarah Young. Hello and welcome.
I'm so happy to be here with you once again, my friend.
And I wanted to see somebody who is definitely all about spreading light and love. That's what I wanted to say. And mid-sentence, I stopped myself thinking, is it the right thing to say? But it's the wonderful thing to say, no?
Absolutely, Phil. I would say that I remind myself and what I consider myself to be doing here a lot like Rainbow Brite. Have you ever heard of Rainbow Brite?
Oh.
You've never heard of Rainbow Brite. Okay, so Rainbow Brite, I guess because it might be an American thing, but there was a cartoon that came out in the 80s with basically she comes from another world, and when she comes to Earth, it's a really dark place. Everything's shadow and there's darkness and negativity and the world we live in, right? But her whole thing is she comes to bring love and light and color to this dark, hopeless world. And that's what the entire show circles around. That was always like my role model when I was a child. But as you can see, I'm all about love and color and light and lifting and bringing, as much goodness into the world as we possibly can.
You called me out. This is absolute weakness is cartoons. My daughter is every single day teasing me. Have you seen this? No. Have you seen this? No. It's the absolute, my total weakness. I've hardly watched ever cartoons. Never worked for me.
That is too funny. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can. That's Rainbow Bright. That's her bringing love and light and joy into the world. My daughter got this for me for Christmas because even though I'm 42 years old, my love for Rainbow Bright is just as strong as it was when I was 5.
And I'm sure that if my daughter will watch this episode, she will be so embarrassed that I don't know who Rainbow Bright is.
My goodness.
How old is your daughter?
Oh, now my children are 21 and 24, believe it or not. So they're much older now, but they know that I love Rainbow Bright, even though it's not been a current show for 20 or 30 years now. Both of my children have seen Rainbow Bright. They know who she is and what she's about. And both of their personalities are also very similar in terms of just bringing a lot of loving and a lot of light and empathy into the world. Thankfully.
All right. And we will not do the math that you're 42 and the kids are 20 something and I'm 53 and my daughter is 11. We will not do the math.
I was very young. Honestly, I was a teenager. When I was a teenager when I had my eldest daughter, I was a very young mother who had no idea what she was doing. As most children don't. I don't recommend having children when you're, 17 years old. I kind of had to grow up with my children as they were growing up, right? But I have really, they're two beautiful, intelligent, kind, compassionate, empathetic, young women now. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have them.
And I have to say, and I also cannot recommend having kids when you're old like me, because then you cannot, when you're supposed to play soccer with them, you're like, oh, so maybe somewhere in the middle might be a good thing. All right, but I should make a proper introduction. Dear viewers, I'm sorry we're already jumping into because it's the second time around that Sarah is with us, so we feel kind of familiar. I should have made a better introduction. As you know, this year it's all about searching for faith, and all I'm trying is to give you different interviews from all kind of angles to help you make your choice, find the right place for you. And definitely Sarah, that's why I invited her back. because last time we talked about her work and so many things around her life. It is a fascinating podcast. You can scroll back and enjoy it. We'll put a link to it right down here. But there was one thing that fascinated me the most, that you've been a pastor, that you've went so many different religious and spiritual paths, but there was not enough time in our last session to really talk about this. And I think that you are the perfect guest for me to little bit nail down how to search, what to find, to know when it feels right, to look at maybe different avenues that you explored in terms of faith, and how you always knew I have to move on, or I got what I needed at the moment, now I need something else. So we really would like to spend that hour talking your personal story to faith, towards faith. And I know that you are very particular about that you're not speaking for any of the institution, that you speak about yourself from your heart, from your story. And I think we made it clear to everyone that you're here for yourself, I'm here for myself, and whoever feels like listening, you're more than welcome.
The first thing I thought of as you were talking, Phil, is when I was probably 20, I would say at that time, I did not have the faith that I have now. I was really struggling. I can actually remember that when I was 14, my father was electrocuted on the job. And I can remember very clearly that particular day when I found out that he had died in that particular way, I essentially looked up, cursed God, and that was how I felt about it. And it was probably 6 years of shutting that out of my life. I really felt as a 14-year-old young developing girl who had just, lost her father in a very traumatic way. I really blamed whoever God was, right, at that time, and felt that was an assault against me almost. I'm older now, but when I was 20 years old and realizing that spirituality was something that was absent from my life, I don't know that I would go so far as to call myself an atheist, because they have very specific ways of believing about things. Maybe they don't believe there is a God at all. I was very confused about all of that. And one thing that's very practical that I did is I went online and I took some of those questionnaires that they have out there where you can it's like a guided questions about what is true for you on the inside of you. And it kind of shows you what's out there, what's aligned with what you already find to be true. And that for me was actually very helpful for me at that time. I'll never forget my top two at that point in my life were Buddhism and paganism, which was really wild and bizarre, honestly, Phil, because I grew up in, Catholic, Lutheran, and churches as like a developing human before my father died when I was, the age of 14. I really, think that it's important that everyone realize that there's so many different paths out there. There's so many different ways to believe, and really leaning into what it is that works for you. And I know, Phil, you asked me a little bit ago, like, how do you know if it's right for you? I would say that there's a part of all of us that has that is truth at the core of who we are. And when you hear it, right? When you hear whatever that true thing is, there's a part of you that goes, that's right. It knows. It clicks, it aligns, it resonates. There's a part of you that knows, even if you don't have a logic reason for why you know that's true, there's a part of you that is truth, that knows truth.
Trying this year to find out the answer that cannot be found. But the better men than me have tried and failed, but it doesn't stop me from trying it again. I think that's the fun part about spirituality, that we try and fail. And I've seen there is a strong trend among a lot of people who've, as you said, they've grown up from a certain background, mainly from the people I know Christian. And then they, read a couple of books and they went Buddhism for paganism or a yoga retreat or went to Bali and, found a guru. I don't know. And, then we're moving on in life and a certain emptiness comes. Somehow it didn't really fill or resonate, or it was short-term fixes. It's like, like a little fix that you got the high, you're at the retreat and you got the guru and you got the white clothing and everything, and it feels real good. But then there's, and a lot of these people are now searching for community, but also for a bit more stability or a bit more groundedness, or there's like a cloud. They want something and they've kind of like moved on from the Bali retreat, but they want to find something most likely in Christian setting and stuff like that. This is the answer I'm having this year to try to help these people with my questions to how to go about finding a community, how to find the right place for you, how to do this. So this is part of the questions I'm throwing out there. But let us, if you'd be so kind, first a little bit go from your personal story, from Buddhism, paganism, after Catholic. And I think you've done a lot of chapters. Can we quick go through them so then we can start to pinpoint with some questions? Will that be okay for you?
Yeah. So are you asking me to start at the beginning? Or are you asking me what happened after the Buddhism, paganism questionnaire that I took?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next step.
Okay. So after that, I think I really started just looking into a lot of different things. What do I mean by that? I mean, I literally enrolled in courses in world religions. I enrolled in college courses in a variety of different religions. I did take a Buddhism class. I took a world religions class, a cultural anthropology class, sociology class. I took courses. I wanted to really have a holistic view of many layers of things. I looked into mysticism. I just got curious, and I think that's really how we learn is by being curious. I would say around that time, I was going through a difficult time in my life, and somebody that was in my life suggested that I work with the light, to imagine, to visualize that the light was coming down from the highest heavens, and it was, it was coming, and it was through all the layers of my consciousness, through my body, through my emotions, through my mind. There was something incredibly comforting about the process of when I felt that life was unsafe, when I felt unsure, when I felt unshaky in my day, I would remember what she said about light and loving and surrounding myself with that loving, that light. And it literally saved my life, Phil, even though it sounds really, really, really simple, and it is. But the more that I learned, the hungrier that I was for what is this all about? I mean, it was extremely transformative for me. And, if you ask the people in our spiritual group, they would tell you that, Jesus is the head of the church of the movement of spiritual inner awareness. And I would also go so far as to say that what are we all about? We're all about loving. It's all about the loving, right? So I was really attracted to the fact that they didn't impose a million rules and rituals on me. It was very much take what you need and leave the rest. It was very much, you can't do this thing wrong. We just want you to take care of yourself so that you can help take care of others. We want you to use everything for your growth, your upliftment, right? And we want you to minister to yourself so you can minister to all. And the way that I started to change, the way that I started to perceive things based on my interactions with such a beautiful community, even when I did something that I felt was horrible or wrong or I was judging me, I was surrounded by a community that was like, hey, we love you anyway. And guess what? We're going to mess up and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to, come on now, we're going to grow. We're going to learn. And it took a long time of building that trust of like, okay, I'm not going to be like outcast because I make a mistake, right? And that was very important to me, especially with some of the ways that I grew up and what I grew up within in terms of my religious upbringing. And, that was when I was 24, Phil. And well, I already told you I'm 42. And it's just the path that has worked for me. It's resonated with me. I've been an ordained minister through my church since 2010. And, I love that we're just here to bring loving and light, onto the planet as at the greatest level that we can. We really have the intention to live from the highest level of consciousness that's available to us. What else do you want to know?
You mentioned the name of the group. That's why I tried to stop you in between, because we are with mysticism, paganism, and so on and so forth. But you found this Christian group, right? It's a Christian group. It's evangelic, I guess, or I'm not an expert.
No, I would say that if you asked the founder, he would say that it's a Christian group. What does that mean? It means that more than we're following the teachings of every voice you hear in the Bible, we're following the teachings of Christ. So the teachings of love your neighbor as yourself, the teachings of, service, loving, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, honesty. We're living out of the intention of living from a place of spiritual principles, but we're also understanding that we're all in human bodies, and that's kind of the nature of being a human, is that we're not supposed to be perfect. So living from the spirit part.
Sounds very, very logic and very down to earth. And they're like a American-wide group, and they have different churches, or is it like flowing around, or how does this organize? And what is your work within the group? You said you're like a pastor, so do you run your own church? Do you do these kind of rituals, or is it more like a one-on-one? So how does this actually work in practice?
Yeah, so the Church of the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness is based out of, like, their physical location is located in Los Angeles, California. But in fact, Phil, we are worldwide. I think that we probably have members of our church in every country of the world. I don't know, like, the most current up-to-date information. I'm sure there's some countries that we don't have anybody that are there, but there's such a large worldwide group. The spiritual director of the church and a group of people that, the staff, they all travel actually on an annual basis. They go to different locations throughout the world, and they, really bring the loving, the light, the ministry, and the service to as many places as they can get to. We meet online, we meet as communities, we meet in person, we have, trainings and events. There are discourses, so it's like spiritual study. You have information that you receive on a monthly basis where you're learning different aspects of growing on an inner level spiritually. And we meet up, with each other. We have different events throughout the world, right? So there might be one in Miami, and there might be another one in Bulgaria. There might be another one in Chile. There might be another one in LA or Kalamazoo. So it's kind of a touch point for all of us to come together and really get into the intention and the energy. It can be really hard on the planet that we live in, with all the things going on. And I know you were saying how you can go to a spiritual retreat and you can feel really good and the vibe's really good. And then you get back into the world and it's like, what do I do with all that, right? And I really feel that for me, the path that I have led my spiritual teacher has really done a good job of creating what I would call practical spirituality. So it's like, how do I maintain that level of consciousness of who I am as a spiritual being, who I am as a soul, and everything comes out from that? How do I live on this planet, on this earth, with all the intricacies, right? While remembering at the core of my being that who I am is a divine child of light, right? And there's a lot of ways of doing that because how we experience life is multidimensional. So caring for yourself on the physical, emotional, mental, imaginative, unconscious, and soul levels. So my spiritual teacher, it's about we're living here to clear or remove the things that prevent us from growing into who we want to be, who we're meant to be, and who we actually are, right? That has never gone away. All of us are a beautiful, divine soul, but over living, over being alive, for different reasons, things can cover up our ability to know who we are as a soul, right? We get guilt, we get shame, we get embarrassment, right? We get humiliation, we get fear, we get all these things that can cover our awareness and perception of who we actually are.
This, of course, very deep words, and I did not expect anything else from you, but we need a moment to breathe here to just take it in. That's basically not fortune cookie wisdom. That's the hard stuff to work on this. So I can see that you are very hardworking. It is like a working order on this. It's not just going there on Sunday, dressing up nice, and everything is like having a little barbecue after it, and then there we go. It seems like that you're taking it very serious, and that's one of the reasons I invited you back, because I have a feeling that you really want to integrate this in everyday life, that you really, last time you talked, I remember the car driving and try to spread love even when the people cut you. I remember that one. So it is for you very much a thing that you try to integrate in your life, which is really impressive for most of us who just don't have that capacity.
I'm really grateful. The longer that I'm on my own journey, the more I find that I remember to call these things in. So, even 5 years ago, I don't think I was as consistent with my intention as I am today. So, like, what was my day like today? When I wake up, the first thing I do is I thank God for another day. Even if it's cloudy or stormy or I'm cranky or I don't feel good, I try to say thank you. And then, I do ask that there's a clearing that takes place, that any negativity, any imbalance, any dis-ease, anything that can be removed that's no longer needed for my growth, my upliftment, and all the lives that I touch, that it be taken up into the highest realms of light and taken and dispersed into the nothingness. And I ask that the light of the whole spirit, from the highest realms, I ask that it fill, surround, and enfold me, and that light extend out to each person that I see that day, and that the light comes through my voice, that the light moves through my eyes, that the light is in my touch, that when I look into the eyes of another human being, that I might see them the way that God would see them. When I respond to things throughout my day that might be not so great, I would like to respond to those in a way that God would want me to. I ask, that, hey, anyone that you want me to bless, anyone that you would like me to lift, I just know that you're going to bring them into my world. And because I make that prayer, I know every day that every person I meet is divinely ordered. Every person I see, it's wonderful to meet you, because I know that, our our heavenly Father, our universe or spirit, or however you relate to, what that is, that it's all perfect. It's not always easy to live that way, right? It's not always like just smooth as butter, but if I can just take the time to just stop and say, I'm going to be meeting with Phil in a few minutes, and I just ask that if there's anything that his listeners need to hear today, I just ask that you bring it into my consciousness, that you work through me, that you bring your loving, you bring your light. Because at the end of the day, Phil, that's really what everything's all about, is loving and light. I mean, that's, I'm sure, why you have this podcast.
We will never know. But at least in my introduction, that's what I say. The reason why I'm having these interviews this year, why I'm having an interview with you, because you make it sound so simple, and then it seems like an answer. When we look so many people who are running, who are scrolling, who are horribly unhappy and disconnected, and then we look almost like a time capsule. The way you talk was probably 100 years back or 200 years back. A lot of people will talk that way. I mean, the settlers, early people, the pilgrims, whatever. There was like a lot of people who were living in faith. Let's call it like that. I think that's a fair way to put it. I hope so, that this works with English. But in my understanding, that's the right term, that God takes a big portion of your day, I think. And that you start your day with God, and most probably you end your day with God. And when you sit down to a meal, He's there one more time, at least, so that your day has, God is present all day long, one way or another. And one can hear that there's a certain clarity and a certain calm that comes out of it. Of course, the problems are not disappearing. Of course, you have bill problems or people problems or car problems or whatnot. I mean, you're part of this world. And as you said, you're human and you're failing and you're disappointed in yourself. And then you have a community that might lift you up again. But basically, you live a life in faith. And it's interesting that there are less and less people while there's a growing need for it. So maybe give a couple of words why you think there is such disconnect, why people have lost faith in such a big portion. Do you have some explanations for it?
I think life is complex. I think that everyone alive is conditioned. What does that mean? We're kind of programmed. No matter who you are, no matter what your life is like, you were programmed. What does that mean? It just means that your brain learned how to create certain neurological circuits based on what you heard, based on the responses you received in your environment, based on the way your best friend treated you or didn't, right? So there's these millions of different occasions that we have in our life, and they're all building this, this big neurological web. And within that, we have a lot of assumptions, or we have a lot of pressure from what other people have told us is right and wrong, right? So maybe you grew up I'll just speak for myself, Phil. Maybe I grew up in some environments where certain churches would tell me that I was going to go to hell if I danced. Maybe some people in those environments told me that I was going to go to hell if I wore certain clothes. All of those things happened to me, and so when you're told from authority figures, and especially as you're growing older, adults are authority figures no matter who you are, because they're big people and you're a small person. All of those create imprints or impressions, right? And it can create a disconnect, especially when what you're seeing on the outside of you doesn't match what's on the inside of you. And that's a really good example of what you mentioned earlier in terms of like, how do you know if it's right or if it's wrong? So even when I was young, when those church people told me that we were going to hell because we were dancing, there was a part of me inside that was like, no, that's not right. That's wrong. That's not true. That's not my truth, right? Maybe that's true for that person, but that's not in alignment with my truth, and I knew that. Like, even though it was a big person and an adult that was telling me this, I knew that wasn't my truth. But I feel like in the world that we live in, we're not taught to honor that. We're taught to override it with what other people have told us is truth. So, in my spiritual path with my spiritual group, one thing that kind of sets them apart and what kind of drew me to them is it's like, I want you to go inside of you and ask that question. I don't want you to come and ask me to validate everything for you. You have the truth inside you, so go in there and ask. Which at first can be very jarring when you're used to living a life of everybody validate everything that I'm thinking and doing and every decision that I make, which is how I grew up. It was very jarring for them to be, when I would ask a question about myself, for my spiritual family to be like, Sarah, go inside and ask that question. So it was definitely kind of like, it was definitely a shift. What was your question again, Phil?
It's a good answer to my question, because it's really along these lines that are so fascinating. Because we have this is new for me. Basically, I had a wonderful podcast a couple of weeks back with a great scholar of the Quakers, and I was really first time introduced to this concept of go inside and ask the question inside. Because until that time, coming from Central Europe, there was either that you try to find the path to God totally by yourself, you're outside of the church, outside of community, and you just try to meditate or whatever to try to find that light totally on your own, which is a challenge and which is interesting, but also sometimes lonely and things like that. Or you have this very strong, organized kind of a church concept, as you said, don't dance or don't wear this or don't do that, like rule-driven, that maybe gives you an enormously strong community, and God knows what you can get if you're part of these communities. You might even get a good job or something like that.
Right.
It's basically how other places in Europe work, that these churches are very strong and financially strong. So you're either out or you're in, but if you're in, you have to obey. And now that there is this new part, that one of the big interests this year, first I learned about a Baha'i. That's an interesting faith, totally crazy, absolutely amazing. Then I learned it from the Quakers. And now I'm listening to you all over again, that there is a way to build a community of people who believe, but trying individually to work it out for themselves. And to me, this is like a very new concept. So maybe can we just ask a very stupid question? Who are the regular people in such a faith? Are they like older? Are they younger? Is it like families coming in, or is it more individuals or like students? Just a little bit, give us an idea of who is the person that is ready for such a hard work. Is there a prototype, or it can be anyone? That I would just like to ask some stupid questions.
No, I don't think there is a such thing as a stupid question as far as I'm concerned, Phil. I would say that many are called and many are chosen, but I would say that few choose back. I would say there's not a prototype. I would say it's not an exclusive club, that we all have this heritage of this divine right of who we are, choosing into who we are. The demographics, when it started years and years and years ago, back in the late 60s, early 70s, I think that at that time they were probably all around the same age. But honestly, I've seen people in MSIA, which is the acronym for the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, that are very, very old. And I've seen people that are very, very young. When I became physically on the planet introduced to that group, I was 24. And I can't imagine, I mean, this is what works for me. It will always be what works for me. And a lot of the people that are, within the movement, same. They've been in this since 69 or 68 or 72, or even though I've been in MSIA since, 2010, and that to some people might seem like, wow, Sarah, that's that's 16 years, which is like, really? That's been 16 years? That's amazing to me. But really, yeah, I'm a baby in terms of a lot of the people have been, they've been doing this since they were 24 also, but they might be, a lot older now.
I have to jump on the word calling, because that's one. Really something I keep hearing, especially Baha'is. You can only become a Baha'i with a calling. Yeah, there's no other way. And by the way, what's interesting, you have to just simply declare yourself, I'm a Baha'i, and you're a Baha'i. That's it. Whoever wants to declare himself that I have the calling, that's who I am now, that is me, and everyone will accept you within the Baha'is. They will not question. They will say, all right, okay, you're one of us. So that's really fascinating in a sense. So that calling element really is amazing in the world where people might find the calling to the latest flagship mobile phone. That's maybe the calling of our time. Like, I've got the calling, I need the latest model. This is really brave to hear it. So one could say you always had that within you. You had the basis, you had the foundation. I know some people hear it in a crisis. Some people are born with the voice, so to say, that calling. For me, it's interesting because do you think that this kind of a faith program, or that the family that you were within now, that this has the potential to become like a million kind of world religion? Or you think this kind of calling you need, the work you need, that kind of determination to make so much space for God in your daily life will be always maybe a bit of a smaller program? If you can answer that question at all.
I don't know what the powers that be have in store, but I do know that, within MSIA, the discourses that I mentioned, you study with those. There's 12 years of those. So you're reading like a little booklet every month for 12 years. And then after the 12 years are up, you move on to these seminars that are on a CD. So I've done all 12 years, obviously, and I've been doing the other seminar trainings even since the beginning as well. So I've been double dosing, I guess, with the spirit, double dosing the spirit, this whole time. So, we're all learning. We're all people that are involved. We're tuned in. We have that connection. We want to grow. We want to lift. It's not always pretty, Phil, right? The work is not always pretty, but the removing of all the junk. Think of a car, okay? If you, yeah.
Sorry, do you know why I'm asking those weird questions? Because I have a reason, actually.
Okay.
And what I really want to ask, or let me see if I can get it out in a smart way, is that I broke you, and then my question is half done. Shouldn't do this too often.
That's okay.
No, it's not okay. But the people, right? The people, as I said, it's a community, what they're searching for. They know they're missing something. They have the urge, but then is it doing the work or not doing the work? Is the work hard enough? So all of these things are spinning around, and I don't know how I smartly put my question. So I stopped you for absolutely nothing. That is embarrassing.
No, I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about. I would say that the work or not the work, being alive, being on the planet, having a physical body, you're doing the work when you're breathing in and you're breathing out, Phil.
My point is simply for the people I have in mind, right? Who are looking for faith, we're looking for community that are, I don't know how to make them ready, how to change, to transform, to bring the space for such a program that many would say, this can I do this kind of a work? Can I go through this program? That they want it light, they want it convenient. And I think the line goes in between, that people have made up their convenient faith, right? They read a little bit, they read a little Buddha, they took this and there, snippets from everything, and they made a convenient little package. They would want the community, but are they ready to commit? So maybe that's actually the thing why I broke you, because of the word of commitment. And that's what is kind of lacking in this world. So that's what I just didn't know how to say it out nicely. But commitment, that's the question that I actually have to you with this kind of path. How to do it without commitment, how to find this commitment if you don't find the light to start with, if you just have the need, but not the full awakening. These are those different strings. I don't know if anything makes sense to you. If not, say that right out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's path is so individual. If they wanted to, start learning about any spiritual path, we all have the right at any time to try it out. Commitment, I think that spirit meets you where you put your energy, attention, focus, and commitment, or however you want to say that. So, spirit, God, the universe is going to meet you. So if you start moving toward something that you want to try, something that's going to work for you, and I'm not speaking specifically to anything in particular, but when you start putting your energy and your attention towards that thing, you'll get met. And if it's for you, you will know that. And if it's not for you, let it go.
Now, finally, my question is getting better in the head. How? Because to do that, what you talk about, and I know what you talk about, you need to know how to stop for a moment and listen. So everything that you're talking about, I think, starts with a moment where you stop and listen. That's how it all begins, right? But I'm talking about people who haven't found that capacity to stop and listen. So that's why I wanted this little conversation with you. How, if you listen, if you're not out there, you're watching this, you can feel, I need the groups, I need the spirituality, but you haven't had the talent, or you didn't find the way to stop and listen to your heart, because that's what you've been saying this whole time. You will find the right group, you will find the right path if you listen what sounds right for you, what feels right to you. This is how I interpret you. Do you have any ideas or some suggestions for people who running all the time, how to stop?
I think that you have to find what works for you, what aligns with you, and what resonates with you. And when you're ready, whatever it is that's meant for you is going to arrive. I'm really a firm believer. You can't just push yourself into this stuff. Like, I have to do it. I have to do it. Like, you have to ease up on yourself a little bit, right? And just relax about it. You don't have to get the perfect path. You just have to find the path that aligns with you and who you are.
Just so worried that the world we live in, with phones and all of it, that less and less people get the chance to actually do that. This is now we're coming to the real question, so to say. My worry is that there are a lot of people out there who want to find the faith and they feel that something is missing, but they're running on such a high speed and they are in the consume loop and Christmas shopping and booking the next holiday and scrolling through the phones. And nothing is bad in all of it. But if you just combine it and the job and the next bills to pay, the life runs in such a speed that I'm just worried if they ever get a chance to feel and to listen. And I know that you say when it's right for you, it will happen and all of it. I don't have your faith that a lot of people will ever get that chance.
I guess in my truth, my truth is that this world that we live in is like a classroom. And who I am at my core is a spiritual being. And I'm wearing a meat suit so that I can come to school. And my soul is here learning. And the way that it does that best is because I have a meat suit and emotions and thoughts and all these tools that you don't always have in other places, right? And other levels of consciousness. But in the body on the earth, it's a great, great springboard. So we have a lot of great tools here. Absolutely, I understand your worries and your concerns. I think that every soul has its own journey and it's supposed to experience certain things. And that's why, being non-judgmental becomes a lot easier when you realize that every person's journey is perfect unto themselves. They could be balancing things from other periods of time that we're not aware of. So, when I see the homeless guy drinking another beer, instead of judging him to get up and get a job, I think, maybe this is his last lifetime. And what he needs to do to move on spiritually is exactly what he's doing right now. Who am I to judge that guy? How do I know? I don't. So I guess for me, I understand what you're saying, but I also think it's all perfect, that we're all here, even if it doesn't look nice, even if it doesn't look pretty. Like some things that I've been through, Phil, would give you nightmares. But ultimately, they were for my growth. They were for my upliftment. Even though it maybe at the time seemed like I was being punished, right? I really did feel like I was being punished. In fact, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that's precisely why I looked up and I was like, F you. And I don't feel bad about that. I have a really good relationship with God today, and I kind of laugh about it now. And that's not what I was taught in the religion I grew up in. I was taught in the religion I grew up in that if I ever did something like that, I would be damned for all eternity. I'm sorry, that's just simply not true. Whoever believed that needed a bigger God as far as I'm concerned, because the one that I'm familiar with is all about loving. But at the end of the day, we can't force people's paths, right? So it's at some point we're going to get, at least for me, okay, I'm going to speak for me. I got really sick and tired of being tired and sick spiritually. I got really tired of feeling lost. And for me, I kind of got a little desperate. I really needed that connection. And I wasn't going to settle for anything else. But maybe, some people, their path, maybe they're not meant to connect. Maybe that's part of their learning, Phil.
I will stop here and make a point to that not the podcast. Just I will make a point to, so to say, to just acknowledge that you're just a person of faith, and it's comfortable to sit and say that homeless person, that's his path and that's his last step, and he's been through maybe 20 lives, and now that is his last one before he goes in the endless light, and he just want to chill out. And it's beautiful, the thoughts that you have. And I just see one has to be strong within faith to take this world with love and not try to change it or manipulate it. Just let God make its miracles. And that's something that not all of us have, that power of faith to, they always want to, help God with their own hands instead of just letting God walk through themselves. So that's one point I think we all really clearly understood where true power lies. But let us, the last couple of minutes we have, I wanted to spend more time on community, being part of a group, what it means, what comfort it brings, what challenges it brings. Generally, not only about the group that you're in, but just I know that you have a lot of different experience. What does it mean? Because I know that this is the epidemic of loneliness is one of the strongest motivations right now why people, again, looking for the spiritual groups, maybe not so much to find God as much as they are lonely and want to find community. Can you explain how much God is in the healing, whereas how much community is in the healing of the soul?
I mean, I would start by saying that the soul doesn't need healing. It's perfect. The soul, the way that it is automatically perfect. But the parts of us that experience life, that have a physical body, that get hurt feelings, that, have thought patterns, all of that, that's a different thing. What was your question?
Community, how much healing is part from God, how much is being part of a community. People's big surge of loneliness, how important is the community element of a spiritual movement?
You know, everybody is a little different, Phil. I mean, for me, the movement of, MSIA, we're not always together. We're not together every Sunday. We have ministers' meetings and things like that, and we have conferences and things like that, and we study independently on a regular basis. I would say that my community, though, feels like home to me. I know for me, and I've known this since I was 24 years old, that if I go anywhere in the world and I truly need a place to stay, I know that if I just contact the office and be like, hey, do we have any MSIers that live in such and such? And they reach out, and I reach out to them and I say, hey, because we're on the same, we're on the same path. We're all about loving. We're about light. We're after the same thing. We get each other, right? And I know that I have a home, in any home that is, part of our community. I know that for me, at least in my community, there's nothing that I could say that would ever truly be bad. There's nothing I could say that would be wrong. There's nothing that I could say that would they would not cast stones at me. They just will not. It's just not the way that we do things within my community. If anything, we all surround each other with as much loving and comfort and light. Does that mean that sometimes we have to be a little, tough love? Yeah, everybody needs tough love time to time, but that it still has love behind that tough. Okay? So, I mean, how much is God? How much is community? I think God is in your community. Right? I mean, Jesus did say where two or more are gathered. Okay? So consider that when you're amongst, people in your community, that, you're in good company with God as well.
And you gave a perfect answer to my question, basically, because maybe people are not as open, or maybe people are not as still, or maybe people don't listen. But maybe the first sign could be that the community feels like a safe place. Maybe even before you have found God or felt the light or heard the voice, you're just in a place where you're less ashamed or more secure, and it's not fake and you don't need to perform, where you just feel for a moment, I am home. Maybe that's the first sign that God might be in the room as well, or Jesus or whoever. That's my interpretation of what you just said. So,
Absolutely. I love that.
And I'm smiling with tough love. I need more tough love for my interview questions. I shouldn't lose track. That is not a good start of the year, but I'll promise I do better. And I will be looking out for some tough love. Sarah, this was amazing conversation, even if we was fishing in the dark. But, it's very hard to explain something like faith. It's something hard to explain love. And I know that there are people out there, hundreds of thousands of people out there, who just try to find their way back home, if I may say that. And if there is a little that you have done today and some microscope that I might be doing this year to help a couple of people to find their home, then I hope I did a little bit to bring love and light into the world as well. Sarah, thank you so very much for sharing these very personal thoughts. And I hope I will see you again in some distant future when something else comes up. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.